Howdy folks, just returning to you to talk to you about the other fine offerings from If Then Incorporated. If Then Incorporated doesn't just deal with cause and effect, they also specialize in problem and solution. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Tex, what's the difference? I mean, cause and effect, problem and solution, and what's this company make two different products? Sort of. The answer is a little more complicated than that. You see, cause and effect talks about what you do and then what happens as a result. But problem and solution talks about what kind of problem already exists and what might happen if you tried certain solutions. So as you find yourself thinking, you might come up with more than one solution. And problem and solution is how you first lay out the problem for the people who are reading or listening to you talk. And then you lay out some possible solutions and talk about what each one's going to require. And then, lay out which one's better or do you need to do more than one. Let's look at a couple examples. So if you've ever had the fortune or misfortune, depending on your way of looking at it, of knowing a mathematician or a scientist, you've probably heard them say funny things like, well, first we have to define the problem. And well, last time I looked up, problem means like an issue that you have that has to be solved, but that's not what they mean. They mean you have to figure out what the problem that you're trying to deal with is, and then really lay out the steps of the problem and the parts of the problem and whether or not it could be solved with one step or whether it's got to be solved with a bunch of steps. All right. Kind of like 2 plus 2 versus doing the quadratic formula. All right. There's a big difference between some problems and another. All right. So when you're doing problem and solution, the first thing you really got to do is you got to lay out for your reader or the people listening to you what is the problem that you're dealing with and how much complexity is there to the problem. Give them a little background and help them understand. Let's take a look at this example. Take this, for instance. Let's take a look at a common problem that we all have. Of course, we've all experienced this before. A lot of thought goes into this sort of thing, I'm sure. When it's Halloween time and you gathered up your harvest of pumpkins, you got all sorts of pumpkins, green pumpkins, pumpkins with stripes, and orange pumpkins, and whatnot. And you're just trying to figure out, what am I going to do with these pumpkins? I'm going to cut these suckers open, scoop out the guts, and I'm going to carve a face in this thing. But then you realize the second you do that, just kind of thinking about Halloween's past and how your scary pumpkin kind of just turned into a sad pumpkin, just kind of deflated and looking like a balloon that's been left out in the sun, you know what I'm saying? So then you end up trying to think of solutions. And if you go online, you might find several solutions. For example, sometimes you read you can bleach a pumpkin to keep the bacteria from eating away at it. But maybe you don't like the smell of bleach, plus it's dangerous to work with. So of course you've got other solutions at hand. You could go out and get yourself some paints. You can create some beautiful things with paints. Plus, the pumpkin's not going to rot really fast because it's not cut open. Plus, you can do a lot of things you can't do with a knife with paint. Colors you can add, all sorts of different designs. You can't light it up from the inside, but you get some other options. Or you could just go outside and go to a store and buy yourself a fake pumpkin. Fake pumpkin's never going to rot. You can take it out next Halloween if you really like it. As it turns out, you can even split the difference in the middle and carve yourself a foam pumpkin and put a light inside just like you would with a real pumpkin. That sucker's never going to rot, plus you're going to be able to take it out later. So as you can see, problem and solution leads you to a whole lot of possible options that you didn't have if you didn't just consider what your different solutions to your problem could be. Here's what that might look like in text. So then if we were to write a problem and solution paragraph or set of paragraphs when we're doing this kind of thing, it might come out and look something like this. Every year in October, farmers turn to the fields to harvest heads. I mean, jack-o'-lanterns, of course. That's what you call a hook. Just like when you go fishing, you got to get your reader hooked in. Readers only spend about 15 seconds before they decide to switch off of what they're reading if it's not interesting to them, so you got to get their attention real fast. If you've ever carved one, you know how much fun it can be. You also know how fast they can rot. The problem is, within days, the prize pumpkin is a pile of putrefaction. Putrefaction, folks, just means rot. How can this be prevented? So you see, you've kind of already set up what your problem is. You're saying you're trying to prevent something. You said what the problem was. You gave a little background information, all right? Now here's what you got to do. Once you have your background established, you need to go in and start talking about your solution and elaborating on it. One suggestion is to bleach the pumpkin to kill the bacteria that causes rot. That can work, but the bleach has to be applied every few days. Plus it smells bad and is dangerous. So now you start weighing your options for your solutions. If you don't cut the pumpkin, it won't rot quickly. Paint the pumpkin, should say paint the pumpkin, not paint the pumpkin. Anyway, as you can see, you develop an argument over time, give solutions to the problems.